10 years had done little to soften the memory of that morning. The way the fog had rolled in thick and silent, the way Alara's silhouette dissolved into it like chalk into rain. Jonah still remembered the crunch of gravel under her boots, the shimmer of her silver locket bouncing at her collarbone, the careless wave she'd thrown over her shoulder before stepping into the trees. She never came back. Now, at 20, Jonah Whitmore walked the same gravel path alone, the mist licking around his ankles like curious fingers. The town had long since moved on, burying Alara in whispers and superstitions. Gone forever, they said, swallowed by the forest. But Jonah hadn't stopped looking. Not really. He'd searched in ways no one else dared, through forbidden books, faded maps, and crumbling folklore buried deep in the town's archives. While others rebuilt their lives around her absence, Jonah had built his life around her return. His bag thudded against his hip as he walked, stuffed with everything he thought he might need: a compass, 3 journals, a tin of matches, and a photograph of Alara taken the summer before she vanished. She stood barefoot in the bay shallows, smiling like she knew a secret. Maybe she had. The Wormwood Historical Society wasn't much more than a converted cottage on the edge of town, but its cellar housed records going back 3 centuries, most of it dry and unremarkable. But Jonah had discovered a few pages that didn't match the rest. Uneven parchment, ink that shimmered faintly in the right light, a symbol etched in the margin that pulsed when touched. He didn't tell anyone. That morning, the symbol had appeared again, this time carved into the frost on his windowpane. The bell above the society's door jingled as he stepped inside. Miss Penrose, the curator and sole employee besides himself, barely looked up from her crossword. "You're early, Jonah." "I won't be long." He didn't wait for permission, already halfway to the cellar door. The manuscript sat where he'd hidden it, beneath a loose floorboard in the back corner. He peeled it open carefully, turning to the page that had haunted him all week. The script was archaic, written in a language he'd only partially decoded. But the phrase was clear enough now. "The Mistwalker shall return when the silver sun breaks the seal." Below it, a sketch of a girl standing at the forest's edge, mist coiling around her feet. The resemblance to Alara was impossible to ignore. He traced the lines with his fingertip. The ink was cold. "Looking for ghosts again?" a voice asked from the stairs. Jonah turned, startled. It was Emery Dalton, local skeptic, part-time librarian, and his only real friend. "You shouldn't be down here." Emery raised a brow. "Neither should you." "What is that?" Jonah hesitated, then handed over the manuscript. Emery whistled, eyes scanning the page. "Creepy. Very on-brand for you." It mentioned the Mistwalker, and a return, and this symbol. Jonah showed him the mark that had appeared on his window. Emery frowned. "You think it's Alara?" "I don't think," Jonah said. "I know." "You know," Emery echoed, dry as bone. "You've got frost graffiti and a spooky book." "That's hardly." The lights flickered. Jonah froze. "That's the 3rd time this week." "Old wiring," Emery muttered, but he sounded less convinced than before. A gust of cold air spilled into the cellar. Both of them turned to the open door, which Jonah was sure he'd shut behind him. A figure stood silhouetted in the threshold, a woman wrapped in a pale cloak, her face hidden by a wide hood. Something gleamed at her neck. Jonah's breath caught. "The locket." "Alara," he whispered. The figure didn't respond. She turned and vanished into the fog outside. Jonah bolted after her. The street was empty. Only the fog remained, thick and suffocating. He spun in place, searching, but she was gone. Emery caught up, wheezing. "Did you just— What the hell, Jonah?" "She had the locket," he said. "It was hers." "I'm sure of it." Emery looked at him, something shifting in his expression. "You're really not letting this go, are you?" Jonah didn't answer. His heart thundered in his chest. The fog was denser than before, clinging to the skin like wet fabric. He turned back to the forest path, the same one Alara had taken 10 years ago. "I think it's starting again," he said. "Starting?" Jonah nodded slowly. "The mist is back. The kind that took her. The kind that doesn't belong." Emery shifted uncomfortably. So, what, you're going in there?
Now.
Not yet, Jonah said. But soon. I need more. More what? Jonas stared into the trees.
Proof.
Maps. The rest of the manuscript. If Alara's alive, she didn't survive 10 years in the woods. She's been somewhere else. And if she's back, his voice trailed off. The implication hung between them. Emery shivered. If she's back, something might have come with her. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then Jonah turned away from the trees. Help me find the rest of it. Please. Emery hesitated, then nodded. You're lucky I like you, Whitmore. They disappeared into the mist together, heading back to the archives. Behind them, a crow perched on a bare branch let out a single, sharp caw, then went silent. The mist thickened with every step Jonah took, swallowing sound and space in equal measure. By the time he reached the treeline, the town had vanished behind him, reduced to memory. The compass in his palm spun uselessly, the needle twitching like it sensed something watching. He clicked it shut and pressed forward, careful not to stray from the old trail. Or what he thought was the trail. He couldn't be sure anymore. The trees looked familiar but wrong. Gnarled limbs curled like fingers, their bark mottled with pale growths that pulsed faintly in the low light. There was no birdsong, no rustling leaves, just the rhythmic crunch of boots on damp earth and the distant whispering that never quite formed words. Jonah didn't call out her name. Something about the silence felt sacred, or maybe dangerous. The manuscript had called it a veil between, a place not meant for mortal passage. But Alara had crossed it, had survived, maybe even belonged here now. His thoughts snagged on that last idea, like a branch across the path. What if she had changed? What if the girl who'd vanished a decade ago was no longer the sister he remembered? The air grew colder. He paused at a fork in the trail, heart pounding. The left path twisted upward into shadow. The right sloped gently down into the mist. There were no signs, no markers, only instinct. And the faintest glimmer of silver on the path ahead, threadbare ribbon, half buried in moss. Alara's. He followed it. The deeper he went, the less the world obeyed its usual rules. The forest floor shimmered like heat rising off pavement, though the air was frigid. Shapes flickered at the edges of vision. Too tall, too still to be human. He kept walking. A clearing opened like a breath held too long. At its center stood a structure, not a building, not a ruin, something older than both. A circle of standing stones, each etched with symbols that squirmed beneath his gaze. The ground around them was scorched black, as if burned by light rather than flame. And in the center stood Alara.
She hadn't aged.
Her hair was still the same wild tangle, her clothes the same she'd worn the day she vanished, wool sweater, jeans torn at the knee, and the silver locket gleaming against her chest. She turned slowly as he entered the clearing, as though she had been waiting for him. Alara? His voice cracked. Her eyes locked onto his. Blue, familiar, and wrong.
Too calm.
Too ancient. Jonah, she said, and the sound of it sliced through him. Recognition, relief, dread. He took a step forward. You're alive. I think so. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Are you? The question hit harder than he expected. He'd never felt more alive, and never more afraid. I came to bring you home. She looked past him, into the trees. There's no home left for me there. Yes, there is, Mom. She never stopped hoping. I never did. That's not true, Alara said gently. You didn't hope. You hunted. There's a difference. He flinched. You were gone. What was I supposed to do? She didn't answer. The silence thickened. The mist coiled tighter around the stones. Alara, what is this place? Her gaze dropped to the ground. A threshold. A prison. A womb. I don't know. It calls itself the fold. The manuscript said it wasn't meant for us. It's not. But it's patient. It needed someone who wouldn't run. Jonah's blood went cold. Needed. I was the first to stay, she said. The others screamed. Fought.
Fled.
I listened. To what? A low hum began, barely audible, like wind through hollow bone. The stones pulsed. To them, she said and pointed. From the trees, shapes emerged. Not beasts. Not quite human. Distorted things draped in tattered fragments of time. Soldiers' coats, wedding veils, crowns of thorns. Their faces were blank, smoothed as if forgotten by history. Jonah stepped back. Alara, we have to go. They won't let me, she whispered. They've kept me alive because I obeyed. You. He didn't wait. He grabbed her wrist. Come on. She didn't resist at first, but as they reached the edge of the clearing, the mist surged up like a tide. The creatures advanced, soundless and swift. A shriek tore through the air, not Alara's. The mist had a voice now, high and warping. Jonah pulled harder. The fog pressed into his lungs like ash. The trees warped again, now impossibly tall, now crumbling into roots that stretched like arms. Alara, move. Her hand slipped from his. She staggered, coughing. I can't, Jonah, they're in my head. He turned to face them. The figures paused, watching, waiting. From his jacket, he pulled the talisman Emery had given him, a charm of bone and twine, old as sin.
He threw it into the mist.
It struck the ground and burst in a flash of white light. The creatures shrieked and reeled back. For a second, just one, the path cleared. He grabbed Alara again and ran. Branches clawed at them. The mist tried to pull them apart. But he didn't stop. Not until they burst through the trees and collapsed on the forest floor, gasping for breath. The air was cleaner here.
Real.
Alara curled into herself, trembling. Jonah wrapped his arms around her. You came back, he said, voice raw. She didn't answer for a long time. Then, so softly, he almost didn't hear. I don't think I came alone. The sky above Wormwood Bay was the color of lead, roiling with clouds that refused to break. Jonah stood at the edge of the forest again, his fingers clenched around Alara's wrist as if she might vanish the moment he let go. She hadn't said a word since their escape from the fold, and now she stared at the town like it was some artifact dug from ancient soil. This is real, he said quietly. You're here. Alara didn't look at him. It feels thin. They had walked all night, following landmarks that bent and blinked in and out of place, until finally they'd stepped back into the world. But she was different now, her posture too precise, her eyes scanning everything like she was still inside the mist. Jonah couldn't tell if she was frightened or calculating. Come on, he said. We'll go to Mom. She needs to see you. At the mention of her name, Alara blinked hard, as if the fog behind her eyes cracked slightly. They moved through town like ghosts. No one noticed them at first, the early risers too focused on their coffee, the shopkeepers unlocking doors with weary ritual. But then a woman stopped mid-step. A bag of groceries slipped from her arms. Someone else gasped. Whispers ignited like dry grass. Is that Alara Whitmore? She's not aged a day. Jonah pushed through the growing crowd, shielding her with his body. But the questions pressed in. How is this possible? Was she kidnapped? Did you fake your disappearance? Alara, say something. She turned. Her voice, when it came, was soft and smooth and terrifyingly calm. I don't belong to your time. That silenced them. The front door of their house opened before they reached it. Their mother stood on the threshold, one hand over her mouth, eyes wide and wet with disbelief. Alara? Jonah felt Alara tense beside him, but she nodded once, slowly. Their mother ran to her, arms flung wide, and for a moment it was as if nothing had changed, just a mother embracing her lost daughter. But Alara barely moved. Her arms hung at her sides. She allowed the embrace, but did not return it. Inside, the house smelled of dust and lavender. Nothing had moved since Alara left. Her room remained untouched, a shrine behind a closed door. Jonah had walked past it 1,000 times, never daring to open it. Now it yawned wide. I should lie down, Alara said. My mind feels stretched. Their mother nodded frantically, already fluffing pillows and smoothing blankets, anything to make her daughter comfortable. Jonah lingered outside the room. When their mother finally stepped away, he slipped in and shut the door behind him. "You're not okay," he said. Alara sat on the edge of her old bed, staring at the bookshelf as if it were a riddle.
No.
"What's wrong?" She tilted her head. The fold wasn't just a place. It was a lens. It filtered me. Filtered. I had to give it pieces of myself to stay sane. Thoughts. Memories. I let it take the pain of being lost. I let it take my fear. But it didn't give those pieces back. Jonah sat beside her, heart heavy. "Can we fix it?" She smiled faintly. "Fix what? I'm here, aren't I? Isn't that what you wanted?" It wasn't a question. Not really. A noise outside made them both stiffen. A whisper, then another.
Low.
Non-human. Jonah crossed to the window. The mist was returning, curling along the street like spilled ink. It shouldn't have been there. Not in daylight. Not here. Alara.
She rose slowly.
It followed me. How do we stop it? I don't know if we can. She touched her locket. It used me as a tether. I think it wants to open away. Permanently. Jonah's mouth went dry. You said they wouldn't let you leave. They didn't. Not willingly. He stared. You broke out. I broke something, she said. And now it's looking for the cracks. A knock rattled the front door. Not a human knock, too rhythmic. Too precise. Jonah backed away from the sound. We need to go. No, Alara said. We need to end it. He turned to her.
How?
She opened the locket. Inside was a tiny shard of glass, foggy, impossibly cold. This is part of the fold's heart. It let me carry it because it thought I was loyal. But if I break it here, now, it might sever the connection. Might. She smiled sadly. It might also pull everything nearby into the in-between. The knocking stopped. Jonah exhaled. Then I'm staying with you. No, she said firmly. You already pulled me out. That was enough. Alara. I remember you, Jonah. Even when the fold tried to take you from me, I remembered. She stepped past him and opened the front door. The mist surged inward instantly. Tendrils wrapped around her ankles, reaching. Alara lifted the shard high. The creatures appeared at the street's end, figures out of sync with time, flickering like film frames in the wrong order. She closed her eyes, whispered something Jonah couldn't hear. Then she shattered the shard against the floor. A pulse of light rippled outward. The mist screamed. Jonah shielded his face. Heat and cold struck at once. The world bent. And then it was over. Silence. Alara was gone. The mist, too. Only the locket remained, cracked and still warm to the touch. Jonah knelt beside it, chest hollow. Outside, the town held its breath. Somewhere above, the clouds began to break.